Hello and welcome to another glorious Transformers Tuesday with Played With. I'm your host, and today we're going to go over something very special. We're going to be covering Transformers Masterpiece movie series MPM-6 Ironhide. I got this figure just a couple of weeks ago, and I brought this up in the last video that I did. Got him on a super steal. He was at Ross for a very, very, very low price of $24.99. Down from $70. I can't believe that I even found him. It's not something that would normally be carried in any of those kinds of shops, so I'm kind of wondering who wasn't willing to buy it and how it wound up there. So we're going to go through the transformation today. From what I understand, historically, the Masterpiece figures are always a little bit more difficult to transform than the regular figures. And even though the regular version of him, which came out several years ago, was already pretty difficult to transform, this takes it up to a whole new level. Basically, this is considered to be, from the online review sources that I've looked into, the second hardest transformer ever made. So, of course, I'm going to love it. It's absolutely the worst looking, best figure in my collection. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I cannot get out of my head how much like the Muppets Swedish Chef this guy looks. Look at that mouth. He completely has the derp face, the big nose. He does the little hand things where he makes little okay gestures. He's got it going on. I posed him and I got him his tiny little chef's hat right here. Made him a tiny little chef's hat. I made him a tiny little spatula so that I could take a photo series with that. And I'm going to post those on my Facebook. But I wanted to go over this figure, not just to review it, because it is an absolutely fantastic transformation, but it is also one of the greatest considerations for toys that you might want to throw away after spending a lot of money on it, because I've heard from seeing reviews of him that he is an absolute bear to transform, and I figured out why. In the instruction manual, which has a total of that many steps, it counts up to 45, but that is a bald-faced lie. That is probably half the number of steps. In most cases, they actually say that you are supposed to be doing one step for two different sides of him, which are so intricate that that actually shouldn't be the way it is counted. Each side should be its own step, and somehow the instructions don't really cover that. They zoom out, give you a couple of gritty pictures of what you're supposed to be doing. They don't show where the tabs are supposed to be going. They've got little expression marks. Let me see if I can find some right here. The little tabs right here where it shows there's an excitement point. And to be honest, a lot of this stuff doesn't make a lot of sense. When I actually look at the figure, most of the tabs aren't covered. There's a few here and there that are, of course, very important and quintessential to follow the instructions on. But for first-timers, there is no way that they're going to be able to get through this thing all at once without some wrangling and jangling of the figure itself. Now, overall, besides the really, really, really silly aesthetic of his mouth opening, you can close that up and give him a more serious look, or just, bring the mouth in so that it's not quite as bad. His fingers are fully posable. And in terms of posability, I will say that this character is probably about 70% of what it should be. One of the interesting things about it is that the shoulders do not work out the way you would want. And I'm bringing this around to highlight this. Basically, so here's the figure himself. His arms are attached to the back side of the front section of the vehicle, not to the sides, not underneath like you would think, on the back. So when it goes to actually rotating him around, the furthest forward he can reach is about that far. He's locked in. He can't actually stress his joints in the shoulder to rotate forward as if he was reaching. That just doesn't work out for him. So in terms of posability, the legs and stuff, they have limited ratcheting function. The hips are, on good swivels. If you're looking for a dynamic pose, you're not going to get it. If you're going to go for the standard standing at the bus stop waiting for his bus to come, he's your guy, definitely, for sure. I'm spending a little bit of time trying to cheat the system here by moving his fists in, because that becomes one of the most quintessential parts of getting this figure transformed. Let me show you what else he comes with. He comes with 2 blasters, similar to the Hasbro figure that they have for him, that's less hard to transform, the non-masterpiece version. And basically he's got 2 little 5mm ports on this, on both sides. Each one of those has a little leg that it can move up and down for robot or vehicle mode. You know, if you get this figure, you can play with them yourself. They've got little rotating functions to them, you know, in case you need to do like stop motion or something like that. But for the most part, I only put them on him when he's actually in vehicle mode, because it makes the truck look pretty cool. Now, in terms of the draw and aesthetic for this figure, honestly, it's all about the transformation for me. I was going to resell him on eBay until I remembered that he's the second hardest figure to transform, because $25 for even selling it on double that price on eBay would have netted me some cash. That would have been okay by me. However, I love the transformation on this figure. I love it. It's absolutely the worst, and I love that. Now, I want to get down into this guy. There's a couple of things here that I'm going to talk about as we're going to transform through. As I said, the fists are a really quintessential part of making sure this transformation works. And it's going to take us a while to get through him. I didn't want to go from truck to character, or robot, back to truck. So I'm just taking him from robot to truck mode this time. Now, if you want, I can do the transformation in reverse, but honestly, it'd be better if you figure it out yourself. What I'm going to do, putting it in truck mode, is the hard transformation. That is the hard mode. Getting him into robot mode, super simple. You just peel them apart, pop a couple of things into place, and when you know what you're looking for, it's not terrible. I definitely would have wanted a figure video showing me how this would have worked had I not had the instructions, if I had bought it used or something like that. Anyway, so a couple of things worth mentioning here. These door parts are supposed to swivel back on the arms and click in, and the tabs aren't real strong on there, so you got to watch out. They'll pop out and just wobble around. On the back sides of his arms, he's got the windshield, and the windshield itself rotates around, and it can be placed up or down depending on how you like it. It also likes to get in the way a lot. It's pretty difficult to deal with. He's got some waist swivel here, and you can see here that the waist pivots down and forward, which is also a nice feature. And I find that working out sometimes when I'm trying to pose him, but not often. When it comes to just the transformation, there's no need for it. It doesn't do anything functionally in terms of the transformation, so it just kind of sits there. And if you didn't know about it, you probably would never know. It's not brought up in the instructions, as far as I know. And in terms of finding it out, it just happens to you. So we'll start off. I want to go with the legs first, so let's go with that. So over here, let's get his arms up and out of the way. We've got the tires, and you've got little flaps in front of them that come out of these ports right here. Pull them out and down. And then the second thing that's the easiest thing to do, I'm going to tilt these guys down, is to take the quarter panel sections off and rotate them around. Now there's a little rubber section underneath the kneecap, so you need to lift the kneecap up to clear the rubber section, and that becomes the fenders over here on the side. And now these have to rotate out. And so what I was saying about it being one step in the directions, this is complicated enough. This should be 2 steps. So this rotates up, and I like to put it back so that the wheel can rotate down and around. And what we've got here is on the bottom, the foot side flips over, and then that whole section rotates up. And what we can do with that is then push the fender into the back. Now this becomes kind of wonky, but we're almost there, and it presses in. I leave the foot up, even though it does a nice clean fold down to become the bumper, the tailgate, but I leave that out of the way because for the time being, it's good to have a little more vision on what's happening. Now, as you rotate the knee back in order to be able to move the tire in, you're going to look for this tab right here, which on the wheel, you're basically almost unable to see it because it doesn't do anything else while it's not tabbed in. And once you get that, it'll help lock the wheel in place. And you can actually, before you do that, you have to fold the hip over. There we go. Much better. And then I like to fold that down. So let's get with the other side. Go with the foot. Pop this up. Get the knee undone. Move that around. Rotate that out of the way. Come on. These are the easy parts, basically. So once we've got that centered, move this up, and then look for that tab. If you can't get that tab, you know that you don't have any of it done right. That's basically what it boils down to, is that the tab for the inside of the wheel well is the marker that you know that you got it done right. Fold that down, and then we will fold these together and look for a nice clean connection. No snaps really, it just kind of slides together. Now, one of the things that you're going to be looking for is a nice smooth line in between the tailgate, which looks absolutely incredible, and the truck bed. Make sure that everything's flush, nothing's sticking up, everything's smooth, and you can see there on the side, that's a good looking side profile to this truck. But we're going to keep on going. Now, one of the cool things about this guy is that he's got this backpack made from the rear window of the cab, and it's got two little pipes that are soft rubber, which I don't really like, but I get it because they would definitely have broken many times by now. These just swing to the side, and the whole thing pulls back. And what you're looking for is there's a little slot inside there, and there's a little tab at the bottom of this notch. And it doesn't really make sense to do it, but when you push it up, you kind of have to press and push pressure on it in order to get it to pop into place and to pop it back out. Now you can see here the waist where it pivots for that section that doesn't really do much. You want to bring that back and it kind of clips in. And then there's two little ports at the bottom of this section that creates the backpack that folds down. And once you get that in place, it gets a nice little, there you go, right there. Gets a nice little connection and holds this in place as you pop the rear windshield into its place. Now, what I've noticed is that the backpack section where it clips in up here, that can get stuck past its point, and you just have to gently flick it back into place. You may have to apply a little bit of pressure, but it's going to be okay. It's a strong, healthy joint. You don't have to worry about it. And that's actually one of the things that I really like about this figure. We're almost halfway done. That is only almost halfway, because even though his entire lower section is half of him, all the work is up in the shoulders, all of it. Absolutely every last bit of the hardest part of this figure is up in the shoulders. So then what we're going to do is we're going to come forward. His chest piece comes down, and we're going to be looking for these two tabs on the shoulders, which are going to be what you're going to be looking for when you want to tab him in, which is what makes it so simple to transform him. You can barely see it in there, but it's basically right here underneath, and that actually goes into this little section right here. Now I'm going to click it in. It's got a nice healthy click to it, and then that's how you know that the shoulders are in place for the robot mode. But I'm clicking it out, clicking this one out. And then what we want to do is we want to make sure that the GMC logo on the front slides sideways, rotates over, and pushes back in, because the GMC logo only exists on the front bumper section, not on the actual grill section for this. My cat's yelling at me. Anyway, so we've got those flipped over. Now we want to get this guy up here, these disc brakes. Basically, they fold underneath. You lift the bumper section up, and they fold back into the shoulder. So I've got it there on the outside. Fold it down, push it in, and rotate it around. Do the same thing on the other side. Get it up, rotate it in, fold it down. Now, inside here, you'll be able to see the bumper section that is the connector for the backpack, and that rotates up, out, and around. The bumper itself will fold out and rotate down, but we're not going to get to that quite yet. And you can see here the GMC logo that is going to be the section for the front grille. Now, what replaces that is the head. The head rotates down, and then this comes back up to hold it in place. We can take that grill section and fold it over. Now, here comes the hard part. We've got the shoulders. We have to rotate them around, and we have to get them back up on this little black section right here. And basically what you're looking at is these black sections are your true point for making sure that the whole front cab is in place. There are tabs that we're going to be talking about in a second that you're going to be looking out for. But what I like to do is I like to keep an eye on it, rotate the shoulders out, up, and over to get them clear of that. Out, up, and over. And once you get those clear, you can press them in just a little ways to get them underneath the bumpers. And that will help you guide the rest of the figure. Now the arms are a little bit tricky. What you have to do is rotate the arms straight back. Get these doors out of the way on the forearms so they rotate out. I'm trying to get it here. Come on, there we go. Out and down. So this little swivel right here has to move over. Same thing on this side. We can show you the little swivel section. Goes over, and it'll meet the arm on the side, just like that. Now you can see here the fist is made, and the fist itself is really important to make sure that it is tight and down. So what I'm going to show you here is the key to making sure the Ironhide goes into place and that the roof section actually seals on the truck itself, because this is the last little bit that is the most important to making sure that this figure has that perfect aesthetic that a masterpiece might have, but without any portions popping off or showing that they're not fit directly in place. The reason why it's so important to have this fist in place is because this section right here on the back of the truck has a tiny little gap for just the top of the knuckles, not the entire fist. So if you don't have the fist bent over just right so that it's angled and the fingers are down out of the way so that they don't hold it out of place, you won't get the clearance on that to pop the doors in on the little section of the side of the windows. Once that happens, if you don't get those in place, those are actually the portion that latches the roof down. So if they're not clear to close, then you can't get the roof to stay down. So what we're looking at here is we're going to rotate these guys around, and then I've got to bring the arms down and up. And you can see here that the arm itself needs to be rotated back, and the windshield is going to tuck. We're going to have these two little tabs sticking down inside of it. Now the way you can tell that you've got that is that this lowest section is folded up against this gray section. The arm is then rotated up from there. The windshield sticks in place. Yep, got that. And then the top of the arm folds down almost to an L shaped for the arm. So the shoulder folds, it rotates directly back up on itself. It doesn't rotate around. You have to push it straight up because the clearance on one side is not the same as the clearance on the other. And that's okay. But again, something that you don't notice, you want to make sure that the screw is pointing inside the body so that it can't be seen from the windows. That's how you know which side you've got it on. So if you can see the screws, those pointing inside, you know that you've got it going the right way. Now the windshield helps stabilize this thing, and we've got the fist in place. Now there's a tab on the door section that meets right here. It's just barely visible. You can barely see it, and that goes into the arm. And if you get that in place, you should be good to go. And one of the things that you can tell about that is once that's put in place, there's another tab right in front of the rear view mirror, the side mirrors. That tab should slot next to the windshield, and if it's good and comfortable and that pops in, you got it. That's all you need. So let's get this guy pushed up, rotate it around. We're going to put the fist in place and then push down on the windshield to make sure that this guy is a little bit more aligned. Get the roof section pushed up, and we're going to push this guy in. And it takes a little bit of adjusting to get done, but what we're looking for essentially is getting this section of the underside, these two tabs, lined up with these two tab holes on the wheel. You can barely see them, but if you can get those lined up, that's a good indication that your front section is going to be all right. So I'm going to start pulling this down, and even though this guy winds up having a pretty seamless masterpiece transformation, this section of the hood sits down too often from the rest of the hood, and it breaks the look of it just a little bit and makes it uncomfortable. But the better you get at transforming this seamlessly, the better the hood's going to look. And it's really the indicator that you've also done the front section right. Now I'm going to go over here and start working on this side. Rotate this guy up. Make sure that he's all the way back up here. Rotate the arm down. Get the windshield up in place. Pop that guy in. There we go. And then we're going to be looking for this section right here to make sure that that's smooth. Now I've got my fist on this side not set up correctly, so I'm going to work on that just a little bit. Bring the fingers down. And it takes a little finesse. Oh, the thumb is in the way, that's why. There we go. So again, we're looking at the fist. It has to be angled just slightly. You don't want it to be up. You don't want those fingers in the way. You want to make sure that it's slightly off to the side. And you can see where the angle of the fingers here is. And that's the really, it's almost like he's not making a fist, but trying to hold on to something. So then the tab from the door goes into his shoulder. And then this section right here rotates down. We can line this up. And I'm going to go ahead and give this a gentle push to bring it together. Now, once you get that far, you can start pushing the bumper down, and that will help get you lined up even further. Now, let's see if this is in the way. That shouldn't be hanging down. Now, when I've gotten this close, I want to make sure that his other fist is in there, nice and tight. And I can tell that the angle of the elbows isn't correct because this thing's still trying to bust out the front without lining up correctly. Now, this section right here, I'm going to have to do this with both hands, but this section for the roof, you take both hands and you just gently pop it together, and that's going to help hold your windshield together. And you can see the windshield looks almost seamless at that point, and it's actually this section of the roof that holds that together, which helps the tabs across the front, which helps the spacing across the bumper. And this is generally what most other people's transformations looks like, a garbage dump of a front end. And I've seen this thing enough times now to know that this is basically where everybody gets hung up. And the spacing on this becomes difficult because there's a tab on each side of the hood that's supposed to go underneath this thing, but they're not big enough and they don't hold it up right, so it dips. So it doesn't look right, so you keep wanting to mess with it, and you wind up messing up the figure. So from here, we're going to pull this back just slightly. We're going to make sure our fists are in place. Okay, we've got that there. And then as I'm looking at the back end, you can see there's two tiny little teeth on each side of the rear windows of the passenger side. And basically those are going to go into two little tab slots, and they're going to pop in hard. Now, there's one. And let's see if I've got the clearance for it. There's the other. And the reason why I say it's a hard tab in is because those are actually the portions that give you the stability to hold the roof down. That's essentially the engineering behind this, is that you've got these 3 teeth that are going to fit in here, but then these 2 tabs on the side, which also aren't big enough to really hold itself in without all this happening. Those aren't going to have the strength to hold it in without those tabs really locking it in. And that's why the fist section is so important to get right. Now I'm looking over here at the front end. My windshield's all tabbed up. It looks good. I'm going to take this section of the bumper, and you're going to look for these tabs on the side and fit them underneath the other sections of the bumper. Push that in a little ways. Let's make sure that we got this sealed up right. Now I'm looking back under here, and this thing's a mess. These guys' spacing should be wider, so I'm going to take my finger and put it on this tooth right here and push it over, and push that over. And if you can get those just right, you'll see the front end comes up a little bit more. Push these guys up in there. And the way you'll know whether you got it right is, again, these teeth line up with the 2 holes on it. And you'll hear them move in, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got it right. The head traveled back up. But once you've got that, once you've got the spacing right, it should help flush the bumper out a little bit more. There we go. Now how's that front end look? That looks much better. Look at that. See how it's dipping down just a little bit? It's because there's really no stability there from anything underneath it to help push it back up. And I've tried this. You really don't have much of a choice, because if you push down on the sides, then you break out the teeth on the bottom, which then pushes out the sides of the bumpers and the fenders, making it so that the grill or the bumper doesn't line up on the other side. So as much as I really appreciate whoever engineered this, good job, guys. This transformation is absolutely fantastic, and I'm absolutely delighted by my purchase. But again, I have autism, and subtle things being off drive me fucking nuts. We're almost done. All right. So now the doors pop in hard to the underside of the tailpipes. So what you have to do is very, very, very gently push them back out. And they're on a double hinge, so you can't rotate them straight down. You have to bring them out to the side, then gently push them down. So out and down. And there's a tab in the back and a tab in the front that are going to go in. And you can see here that there's a little bit of occlusion on the side here. You can see that popping out. That's because the front section isn't popped in. So let's get that in there. Make sure that the tab's in place. It is. Get this guy rotated up and around. And I just kind of like to gingerly press this in to make sure that it's got the clearance. And you'll also hear it click in once it gets to the back end. I sometimes push on the back in order to get that going. But once all that's done, and in this instructions, and sometimes you'll have the roof folded up like this, you want to make sure that the roof folds down along this to straighten up on the hinges, because it's another double hinge, and just rotate that gently back around until you meet the teeth, and then squeeze in from the sides to make sure that you get the final transition. There shouldn't be any clearance on the sides. Again, the fists actually make that section work together if you've got it right. So if you don't have the fists correct, none of this stuff is going to seamlessly line up. And what we're looking at here is basically a final check on this guy to make sure that he's doing good. Push the tailpipes in. They've got a little wiggly section that can rotate out. So sometimes that pops out. You just want to line it up. Just make sure that you get it right in there, and then just gently pop it back in. It's okay. But there you go. He's a truck. The shoulders are up inside. And like I said, if you see the screw, that's how you know that you've got it rotated backwards. But this whole front end section, I mean, it looks pretty boss-like. I think maybe this guy's poking up just a little bit. No, I'm just messing with it because I'm nitpicking. But you got the front end GMC, looks like it lines up pretty nicely. And the wheels look good. It rolls really smooth. And overall, it's a great looking alt mode. This truck looks fantastic, and it looks identical to the real life version. I mean, the truck bed, the bumper, just about everything about this thing, except for a couple little tidbits here and there of kibble are sticking out. Two 5mm ports for the guns on the sides. And let me show you how that works. So these guys have little things that tab out, and what we're going to do is we're going to just put them over here and hang them. And this is another one of my gripes. The 5mm ports on this are a little bit loose, and it becomes problematic on one side because one of them hangs down like that. So you got to kind of hold it in place or just rest it. It's okay. But I mean, it just looks absolutely awesome. Absolutely incredible. I absolutely love this thing. And once you get that all tightened up, it's just a great figure all around. You know, and tearing it back into shape, it's just into the robot mode, super easy. You just basically reverse the whole process, but for whatever reason, you don't have to be nearly as technical about it. The cab is really where the technicality comes. I mean, this is now a 30-minute video, and I spent at least 15 minutes talking about this cab. So, if anything, I would strongly recommend, even for $70, this thing is a technical marvel. I mean, it's absolutely worth every single penny. It's large, it's chunky, it's got die-cast parts, it's got really, really, really well-made and well-maintained double joints all over the place. It's got soft plastic in the portions that need to be. So they were really looking out for people when they made this. I'm really happy with it. And if it wasn't such an absolutely ass-ugly face, this would probably have elevated itself to my very favorite figure, because I feel hesitant to transform this thing because it is such a beast. I literally look at it and go, I'm gonna enjoy myself, but it's gonna be hard. Yeah, let's do it. And that feels good. That's something that only a few figures can bring me. The Masterpiece Megatron, the first one, that thing is such a bear, and I love the ever-loving shit out of it. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys get one of these and you're having trouble with it, take a couple of my tips and tricks. I hope they help you out so that you can enjoy this thing in its alt mode even more. And, you know, we'll see how it goes. Let me know if you guys found this useful. And in the next couple of videos, what I want to do is I want to talk to you guys about some more of the Studio series. I picked up this guy recently, the new Bumblebee from the most recent wave, and I also picked up Hot Rod. And I'd like to talk to you with a comparison of these two and reviews of both of them about a really great figure, despite the fact that I absolutely hate Bumblebee now, and this guy, who is probably an absolute, well, we'll get into it later. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed, and during my next review, I'm going to help you guys figure out whether or not you want to get one of these. A Computron that I picked up on eBay a couple of years ago that has been modified. So I'd love to get into that and show you what it is and talk to you about how awesome this figure is. Anyway, until next Transformers Tuesday, this is Played With, and I'm going to sign off. Have a great rest of your week.